see you guys in the dark.
I drive for Lyft while putting myself through trade school. I drive for other similar companies, but that's beside the point. I have many horror stories for those as well, but I'll tell these another time. It was Christmas Eve of 2020. I was out running Lyft for a few hours before heading to my mom's with my new baby and wife. Nothing special going on for that night, just the usual. I get a ride request. It was a pickup from this kind of lower income apartment complex. No big deal. I drive and I find my passenger. He has all his belongings, several boxes of stuff. Now my car is a 2006 Chevy Impala, so it's not too big. We get all of his stuff loaded up, barely, and we are on our way. During the ride he's crying, saying his girlfriend was cheating on him, and he had to walk in on them earlier that night. He couldn't stay there because it was her name on the lease. So I was taking him to a hotel. Now in my city, we have a street that is well known for having vices, hookers, drugs, gangs, weapons, and shady motels. The works. We get to the motel. He asks me to wait for him to check in and get his key. No problem, man, I say. I'll confess, I break the rules a little when it comes to Lyft. I have a gun hidden in a concealed holster secured to the underside of the driver's seat for protection. Reason being, driving Lyft and other contract apps, I've had knives and guns pulled on me, as well as people have tried to fight me, rob me, and all kinds of other things. But like I said, another time. This motel was on that street that I mentioned before. Homeless people were everywhere. There was a dude on the far corner of the complex that still had a needle in his arm, passed out against the building. And I'm a big fan of true crime and horror narrations, so I'm on edge. He gets this key. The whole motel is ground level. So to help the guy out, I drive to his door. As I mentioned before, he had a lot of stuff, so I started trying to help him unload. While on my second trip getting stuff, I saw a guy come out of the room just to the south of my car, followed by two ladies. They came up to the room that I was next to. One of the ladies pounded on the door and then opened it. That's when I saw the guy raise a fucking shotgun up of his long coat and storm into the room. The two ladies followed his and slammed the door behind them. Following, I heard a lot of yelling and shouting. I was just waiting for shots to ring out. Out of nowhere, my passenger came up behind me. I can take this, man. Go ahead and take off. Have a Merry Christmas. And he gave me a cash tip. I didn't even notice that he took the boxes out of my hand or slid a $5 bill into my pocket. I was frozen. I knew what may have been going down in that room, but I had to leave, and or at least get to where I can get to my gun. I know the guy and both ladies saw me, and I know that they knew that I saw the gun. I had to get out of there. You know, no witnesses whatsoever. I had to get in my car and speed away quickly. I got a block away or so and called the cops. Gave them every single detail that I could. After I got off the phone with the police, I signed out of Lyft. I hadn't made much money, but I was done for the night. This happened about a year ago. I'm in a long-distance relationship, and I often fly to visit. I didn't have a ride arranged to come pick me up, so I usually use Lyft or Uber to get to and from the airport. This particular ride started off fine. The guy was from Haiti. I believe that he said so. He had a very thick accent that was often hard to understand. The beginning of the ride was just him making small talk like most drivers do. Where are you flying from? Are you in college? Do you have family here? And so on. We get on the freeway, and there's a lot of traffic. I had a layover flight, and of course all the outlets were in use, so I couldn't charge my phone. I'm hoping this traffic lightens up because I really need to keep in contact with the people that I'm going to stay with. Of course, with my luck, the app crashes and says you have arrived while we are literally in the middle of the freeway near no houses at all. I get kind of annoyed, and the driver says that he'll pull over at this Walmart nearby to figure out what's wrong. Apparently he had a very old phone, and it wasn't giving proper directions, so I said we can use mine, but I needed to charge it first. He asked me to sit up front so it was easier, and I thought nothing of it, so I went up front. He tells me that he will make the rest of the way for free without using the Lyft app. I put the address in, and we're back on our way. As we're pulling out of the Walmart parking lot, he asks me how old I am. I told him I had just turned 18, and that's when things kind of got weird. He seemed to lighten up at how young I was, which was a bit odd, but whatever. He then asked me a series of questions like, why don't you live here in this state? You should move here. You could go to college here, so why don't you? I'm a doctor, and Lyft is a side job, so I do have money. This man was at least in his mid-40s. I told him that I had no money to just randomly move states and start college, seeing as how I had just become a legal adult. He then told me that I can take care of you. I'll buy you a little apartment and a nice car, take you out, and pay for your college. I thought that he was joking, so I kind of just awkwardly laughed and said, that's okay. He didn't need to do that, but he kept on insisting. I was getting kind of creeped out by him. I really didn't want to jump to conclusions. I thought maybe he's just not sure how to hold a proper conversation since he's foreign or something. About 20 minutes later, we were about 5 minutes from my destination. My phone kept going and doing that annoying charging, not charging, that phones do when charger wires are loose. I had this phone a while, so it did this at times, and apparently hadn't been really charging at all, and it died. Since we were so close to the destination, though, I told him that I knew the rest of the way, but I'd have to tell him to turn right, and he'd say okay, and purposely turn left, or keep going straight. Anything but what I told him to do. Now we're lost because he's ignoring everything that I'm saying, and playing it all off as an accident. And I'm not super familiar with the entire area. I only knew a small portion of the streets. He tells me that he lives nearby. I start getting really scared because I think he's going to kidnap me or something. I let out a single tear, and then I tell myself to keep it together because in the movies, whenever they see fear, they get mad. So I'm trying to make it seem like I'm not losing my shit. Finally, he turns back around, and we're almost there again. He starts purposely going the wrong way. At this point, I got my phone to about 5%. He reaches over while at a red light and grabs my phone, rates himself 5 stars on Lyft, and friends me on Facebook. He also puts his number in my phone and tells me to call him if I ever need anything, and that we should go out sometime. I give a little fake smile so he doesn't know that I'm about to shit myself from fear. Eventually I get so fed up, I just jump out at another red light and tell him thanks, but you're really scaring me. Bye. I call my boyfriend on my 5% battery, tell him where I am because I'm really scared, and I need him to pick me up. My Lyft driver is shouting out the window for me to get back into the car, but there's no way in hell that I was going back in there to be some man's sugar baby that was a total stranger at that. I go somewhere with lots of people and wait for my boyfriend. This whole ordeal made the ride last about 2.5 hours, no exaggerations. And it should have taken about 45 minutes, even with the traffic. Later I called Lyft and told them everything. He was supposedly fired, so that is good. One night, my boyfriend and I were out drinking and hanging out with our friends, and went to go to our other friend's apartment that lived about 10 to 15 minutes away from us in the next town over. It was getting pretty late, and we both had to work the next day. We called an Uber to pick us up. Our Uber gets there. Everything is fine. We make casual talk, as you usually do with Uber or Lyfts. The vibe was fine. The dude seemed pretty nice. Nothing to worry about, at least. I was just exhausted and wanted to go home. Then I remember feeling like wide awake out of nowhere. We get to the end of a street, and I recognize it as being close-ish to our home. While I'm really bad at directions, this was a turn where it was like you turn right. You're going towards our home. You turn left. You're clearly driving in the complete opposite direction. The guy gets to the stoplight, flicks his left blinker on. I immediately start looking around and look to my boyfriend, who's clearly on edge. My boyfriend asks the driver where he's going because this is clearly the wrong way. He tells my boyfriend not to worry, that he's from the area and he knows a shortcut. Whatever, we both relax a little bit, especially because this was a main road and there were plenty of side streets around that he could have been cutting through. He gets to another stoplight and has the ability to either make a right, which could put him going towards the general direction of where we lived, or left, which was going in the direction of the next town over. He flicks his left blinker on again. At this point, I notice that he has the Uber app and GPS tracking totally off. His entire phone is off. There's nothing tracking his driving or location, and he's not being monitored by the app. My heart starts beating. I get out my phone to call 911 and my car keys because I have this shiv-like stabby weapon thing as a keychain. My boyfriend flies out of his seat and lunges towards the front seat, so he's half standing up and starts yelling, asking the guy where the fuck he's going, because we know that this is the wrong way. The guy immediately flicks his right blinker on instead and skirts into the right lane instead of the left, where he had previously been. He says sorry over and over again. My boyfriend says, "You know what? Never mind. We're gonna get out right here. This is fine. Just please unlock the doors." When he went to unlock the door, the driver freaked out, got really defensive and on edge. Was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I promise. I'll take you home now. I'm going the right way now. I'm so sorry, buddy. I got you." Almost admitting that he was clearly taking us in the totally wrong direction. I can't remember if we just rode the rest of the way in that Uber just because we were no other ones around at that hour, and we felt like we called the guy out enough that he wouldn't do anything, or if we actually got out of the car and began to walk home. Like I said, a very exhausting and drunk night. The most chilling parts about this for me was how he had his app off, and how he was so quick to correct himself as soon as we noticed. He didn't even try to come up with a cover story to justify his actions. He admitted that before my boyfriend freaked out on him, he was not taking us to our destination. We reported the guy the next day on the Uber app, and have never come in contact with him since. I don't know what he was planning, but I pray to whoever is up there that he didn't have the opportunity to scare anyone else like this ever again. I'm female, and I drive for Lyft at night. I'm on the shorter side of 5'4", and have been driving for nearly 6 months. I tend to drive downtown Denver, especially on weekends when there is the most money to make. In this time, I've only had a couple of truly scary encounters, and I drive 7 nights a week, at least a couple hours a night. The first scary one started out normal enough for that late night. I had just dropped off a passenger in Aurora, and was making my way back towards Market Street since the bars hadn't closed yet. I get a pickup that's on the way. It's a nice enough area that I don't feel uncomfortable, but anyone who knows Aurora knows it's not really the best area, even with the few nice areas. A couple of guys hop in front, one in back. Both have on hoodies and are carrying backpacks, but this is Colorado and almost 1:30 in the morning, so that's not odd. Where it gets odd is after they get in. I give my normal greeting, but they completely ignore me, shove their backpacks onto the floor, and pull their hoods up while shielding their faces from the windows with their hands. I was instantly uncomfortable, and I could feel something was off. It was only a 10-minute drive, and we were in a secluded area, so I decided the safest thing I could do was complete the ride. I could feel my fight or flight instinct kicking in. Within a minute, I had decided if they tried anything, I was going to crash my car. Neither one had put on a seatbelt, so I figured that would be my best chance. Once we arrived at the location they wanted to be dropped off at, I could tell that it was not a good area. Bars are on all the windows, trash is everywhere, and cars in disrepair. They get out, but don't shut my doors, and start whispering to each other while glancing at me. One of them has his hand in his pocket, fidgeting with something. At this point, I've had enough, and step on the gas, driving off with the doors open. I drove a couple of miles until I get to a gas station with lights and people before I stopped to properly close both doors. I called it a night and headed home to cuddle with my toddler and my husband before having a good cry in the safety of my own bed. I have no idea what they were planning, but I do know I was terrified from the moment that they pulled their hoods up to the moment that I drove off with my doors open. Another story takes place a couple of weeks after the first. I swore off all pickups in Aurora and the shady parts along Colfax at night. I would still drop people off there, but I would also turn my app off and leave the area when I was done. I was downtown as usual for a Saturday night, and the bars were closing. I get a shared ride, which can be very good at bar closing. Now the thing to know about shared rides is you can't request more than 2 seats, leaving room for 2 more people. I have on multiple occasions had a full car with these types of rides. I get to the person and unlock my doors as normal, and in get 3 people. Small problem, but I'm polite. I tell them that I can't give them a ride with 3 people, so they will have to order a different lift. This is where things turn. I don't want to pay more. I'm sorry, but either one of you has to get out, or all of you do, and you need to order a different ride. This is a shared ride, and that means I can get 2 more passengers, and they need seats as well. With share rides, you are only allowed to book 2 seats for 2 passengers. I'm not paying more, so you can just ignore those other rides and take us home. At this point, he became aggressive and putting his finger to my face. Maybe I should have been more scared. Only this is Market Street at bar closing time, and it's packed. There are drunk people everywhere, and where there are drunk people, there are cops. I roll down my window as he continues to tell me what I'm going to do, and starts threatening to put my bitch ass in its place if I don't start driving right now. I didn't catch all of this since I made eye contact with a cop and was focusing on getting his attention. Okay, now you have a new choice. You can all get out, or I can get the cop right there to get you out. Said cop was making his way over, seeing something was wrong. They all jumped out. The guy flipped me off, and they disappeared into the crowd, still looking for rides. The cop stopped to ask if I was okay. I gave him a rundown of what happened, and thanked him for coming over. I headed off to my next ride, who was a very polite gentleman. In both cases, I reported them to Lyft, so I wouldn't get paired with either again. I also carry a foam pepper spray for defense, and have a dash cam that records the interior of my car now. Since that last one, I haven't had any issues, so thank God.